Good day, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Kevin Hogan. I'm the author of The Psychology of Persuasion, 21 other books put into 41 languages around the world. Welcome. Today, when to sell. Why doesn't anybody talk about when you should be selling? They always tell you should be selling all the time. There's no question. There's some validity to that. There's some value to that. You probably should be selling all of the time. But there are certain times of the month, of the year, of the week, of the day that you're going to be able to sell a much higher percentage of people that you communicate with. And if you take advantage of those optimal times each week, each month, each day, each year, you're going to close more sales and you're going to be much more efficient, gaining more business over time. There's a lot of times you don't want to be in the persuasion, in the sales process. You don't want to be selling. And so why is that? Because there's a lot of times in the course of a week or a month or a year or a day that you are going to hear no, and talking to that person, while as exciting as that might be at this exact moment, there are specific times that that person's just going to say no, regardless of how good you are, regardless of how good the rapport is, they're going to say no. So how do we know all this information? Where does it come from? What's it all about? How can we really know when to sell? And within a presentation, closing is one of the skills that everybody teaches. Everybody shows you how to close. Would you like A or B? Would you like it in blue or red? All those kind of things. But nobody tells you when to ask the question, right? Nobody says that, or when to hand the person the pen. So hopefully we'll be able to cover all of that today. We'll see. All right. So back, some time ago, I was in charge of a couple of different organizations, telemarketing programs and sales programs over a period of years. And in all of these companies, we kept incredibly tight track of all the outbound phone calls, all of the sales that were being made, all of the conversion rates that were happening, and this is 25 years ago. And so I had a chance to do this for a nonprofit organization and two for-profit organizations. So I've had a pretty wide range, probably between 500,000 and 1 million statistics logged of phone calls made, sales presentations made, and I was able to track and to see what really happens and when. Now, that's that part. And then there is the why this happens. Well, it's all about what's called self-regulation units. Now, a self-regulation unit, that sounds like a pretty complicated thing, but really, it's not complicated at all. When you wake up in the morning, imagine that, well, let's take, for example, this woman over here. And she wakes up this morning, let's say that she's got 3 kids and a husband. Say that she's in charge of cooking breakfast for everybody in the morning and getting her kids out to school and the husband out to work. Okay, so she wakes up at 6 a.m. and she's frustrated. Why? Because the husband's in bed until 7. He doesn't have to cook for the kids. He doesn't have to do much anything in the morning. All he's got to do is take a quick shower, hop out, a bed, put the tie on, and get in the car and go to work. That's not so tough. But when you're a woman, and perhaps with 3 kids and a husband, you might have a few other stresses and challenges in the morning. And how we handle stress and how we handle challenges is going to determine when this woman is going to say yes or no in the course of the day. What's interesting is it's completely the opposite of how we would think. We would think that the more controlled and the more intelligent and the more behaviorally accurate and emotionally intelligent this woman behaves, the more likely she is to say yes to us. But that's actually true, but it's not quite that easy. See, what happens is when stresses happen early in the day. For example, the kids are screaming, they're fighting at the table, and she's pouring breakfast for everybody. Well, she doesn't want to yell and kill her children. She loves those children. She's had them for a long time. They belong around the house. And so she's going to let them live, and because she wants to get them to school and actually drive them over to where she's got to get the school bus, she doesn't do any damage to her children at all. She holds it in, and she has emotional intelligence, right? So as good as that is, she burns up what we call self-regulation units. So let's say that she started the day with 100 self-regulation units, Now she's down to, say, 92 because she didn't hurt her children, she didn't scream at her children, she didn't yell at them, she didn't discipline them for misbehaving. Husband's late getting out to work. When she gets home, she has to actually go wake him up. She's really upset about this because he got to sleep till 7:30. She was up at 6. She's already made breakfast for everybody. He was supposed to be downstairs to finish up the waffles or the, whatever might have been cooking at the time, and she's irritated, but she doesn't yell at him either. And so she burns up 5 more self-regulation units. She's got self-control. And so now she's down to 87. And so she finally gets the husband off to work, and now it's time for her to get to work. And she looks around and she can't find her raincoat. She's wearing a very nice outfit today, doesn't want it to get wet, and she can't find the doggone thing, and she doesn't start screaming. She doesn't get upset. Well, I mean, she's upset a little bit inside, but she doesn't let it show. She wants to be controlled, and that burns up 5 self-regulation units. Now she's down to 82. She finally finds the raincoat. Out she goes. She hops in the car. She starts to drive, and as she drives, she sees Dunkin' Donuts right over there. When you are burning up self-regulation units, when you're very in control, all of a sudden you start to desire food, specifically sweets. Why? Because sweets refill the gas tank of self-regulation units. It's a fascinating thing. Carbohydrates, and in particularly sugars. So she sits there and she goes into Dunkin' Donuts and buys 4 donuts for herself, and she sets them on the car right next to her. Now, going into the store and buying the donuts, that doesn't burn up any self-regulation units. She was impulsive and she went and bought it. That burns up no self-regulation units. Being impulsive burns no self-regulation units. But then she sits there and she's in her car and she's got all these donuts sitting right there, chocolate-covered donuts. Oh man, good stuff. And she's driving to work. It's a 20-minute drive to work, and even though she was thinking of eating the donuts, she's not going to eat the donuts. She burns up 10 self-regulation units on the way to the office. She's down to 72. So she takes the donuts and she's sitting there getting ready to go in the office building, and she's thinking, and she throws them in the trash. 5 more units down the drain. She's not going to get that sugar fix that she so needs to have self-regulation units. 5 more units burned up. She's down to 67. She goes into the office, meets with some employees. There's a note on her desk from the boss. The boss says, you got to fire this person today. Person hasn't been doing a good enough job. And she's sitting there thinking to herself, well, why in the heck am I firing this guy? It's not like... He's the boss, for goodness sake. He should be fired. She doesn't say anything. She's a good employee, and she's a good manager, and she has social intelligence as well. And so she doesn't get upset visually. Nobody can tell she's upset. She brings the person in, and she has to fire the person, and she doesn't break down. She doesn't break down in frustration in front of her boss or the employee. She burns up about 20 self-regulation units through this incredibly unfair process. She's down to 47. She goes out to lunch. She heads over to lunch, and she's been on a diet trying to drop a couple of pounds because she was a few pounds overweight, and she almost blew it this morning, right? When she had the donuts. Now she goes out to lunch, and all of her friends are there, and they've all got their salads, which look really low-cal, but they're really not because they're just bathed in ranch and blue cheese and whatever all those other dressings are and all that kind of stuff. And then she orders a salad with nothing on it. Or maybe she says Thousand Islands on the side, like I do sometimes, but you never use it, right? So she burns up self-regulation units here. A lot of them. She burns up 15. She's got a whole table full of people. She could so use that glass of wine right now, but she doesn't take it. She doesn't take the salad with the dressings. Instead, she orders a salad that's going to allow her to meet her goal of losing weight. And that burns up 20. Now she's down to 42 self-regulation units. She is now ready to go back to the office. She gets to the office, and the IRS, she finds out, is going to be auditing her company. She's an accountant for the company, of course. And she wants to explode. She wants to absolutely blow up. She gets the IRS on the phone. She does a good job at tracking all the expenses and the costs for her business. She does a perfectly awesome job of analyzing their books every single month and getting the right information to the IRS when she files her 941s and all of those cool forms that you have to send the IRS. She does a great job. She doesn't kill anybody in the process, doesn't scream at the IRS lady on the phone. she burns up 15 more self-regulation units. She's now down to 27. The day is now done at work. She drives home in traffic. There's road rage on the way. She's frustrated. She's angry. The guy cuts her off. She toots the horn, just like that. No self-regulation units burned up. She gave in to those animal desires to be angry and frustrated. That burns up no self-regulation units at all. When you're impulsive, when you become angry, when you become frustrated, and you let it all out, it burns up no self-regulation units. When you're controlled, when you hold it in, when you behave intelligently with social and emotional intelligence, on the other hand, that burns up self-regulation units. It is an interesting experience. So she gets home, the kids all come home, and they're complaining about their day at school. Oh, Mom, I had a tough day at school, had to work during study hall, and the kids were complaining when I got up in front of the class, and she says nothing to correct her children's behavior and all these kind of things. She's really good. She makes dinner. She wonders why her husband hasn't cooked dinner. He's been home for an hour. How did he do that? She doesn't scream and yell at anybody. She's going to go and cook dinner. She's going to make it all happen, and she goes over there and she gets her thing, and she's getting frustrated. She was down to 27 units. Now she loses 20 self-regulation units because she's emotionally intelligent, socially intelligent, well-behaved. She's avoiding the alcohol. She's avoiding the glass of wine next to her. She's not touching any fattening foods, even though she desperately wants to. She's down to those 17 self-regulation units. Her husband comes in, starts complaining about his day. He didn't have to fire anybody. His company's not getting audited by the IRS. He's frustrated because he lost the football pool this week. She doesn't want to kill him. She has the knife in hand, cutting up all of the cantaloupe and all that kind of stuff. She doesn't kill him. She's a great wife. So she doesn't kill the guy. She uses her social and emotional intelligence and says, you know what, I'm a mature, intelligent, responsible adult. She doesn't kill him. Her self-regulation units, she burns up 16 of them right there. She's down to one self-regulation unit. That's all that's left. She is at the cliff. She's ready to jump off. It's now 6:17 p.m. Somebody at the table has the audacity to say, honey, I don't like the steak. It's not very good, and the potatoes aren't so hot either. What happened? Her self-regulation units, that uses up 11 self-regulation units. Unfortunately, she only has one. She blows up. What, are you insane? Have you lost your mind? Are you crazy? Do you have any idea what kind of a day I had? Mother goes ballistic. Back when I was a kid, Mom used to call it hysterical, okay? And it's kind of that, right? And so she goes nuts. She loses her mind, right? But unfortunately, she's not getting any self-regulation units today. She has a 7 o'clock appointment to meet with you, and you are going to see her in 43 minutes. You're going to his office. You're going to talk to the mortgage broker today about getting a loan, right? And so there you are. The lady goes and talks to the broker, and he says, you know, ma'am, all you have to do is pay this. You know what? I'm not paying any upfront fees at all. I've really had it. And you're thinking, this is a crazy person. What in the world happened? Well, what happened was she burned up her self-regulation units at 6:17, and it's now 7 o'clock. She stands up, she grabs her husband, and she walks out the door. And you, the mortgage broker, the real estate agent, the salesperson, lose the sale. You go tell your boss, sir, I lost the sale. I don't know what happened. Well, son, you have to do better at closing. No, I don't think it was that. It had nothing to do with that. Had nothing to do with that. You couldn't have built rapport with these people. Why? They had no self-regulation units. She was out of them. Unless you have an IV and you could put an IV drip of saline and sugar into her body, you're not going to have any self-regulation units that she can deal with in order to say yes to you. You need people to have self-regulation units when they communicate with you, because you will say things that will set somebody off. It has nothing to do with you. You aren't the problem, and she isn't either. It's biology, and the biology is really quite simple. Everybody's given a different amount of self-regulation units every day when they wake up in the morning. Everybody runs through them at a different pace, and sometimes at 7 p.m., by the end of the day, of course, you're out of self-regulation units. When do you get them back? How do these things happen? What happens with biology? When you eat sugar, glucose to be specific, self-regulation units increase. Do they go back to the 100 that you had at the start of the day? No, not at all. But you can get up to 20, 25 of them. And a nap could bring you back 20, 25 more. But really what you need is a good night's sleep overnight, and then you have your sort of refill. It's not quite 100 every single day. It's usually like 100 on Monday, 90 on Tuesday, 80 on Wednesday, 70 on Thursday, 60 on Friday, 50 on Saturday, 40 on Sunday. That's pretty much how it really works. And we'll talk about that in greater detail a different time. But for today, realize that early in the week, and we're calling Monday the first day of the week in this case, not Sunday, people tend to have the most self-regulation units. And then as each day of the week progresses, the person has less and less self-regulation units, which means they burn out of those units later in or earlier each day as the week progresses, which means that you don't want to talk to people late in the day as the end of the week nears. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you don't want to be talking and selling people in the late afternoon or evening. Now, that's the concept of self-regulation and the fact that we all have a certain amount of units. So we already see that it would be superior to sell to someone and to let them buy our products and services and build a relationship with him when? Earlier in the day and earlier in the week. Now let's talk about the day first. You wake up in the morning and we saw how her day went. It just went ding, 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 and then boom, right? So if you have a 7:30 appointment, you're probably not going to make the sale. The answer there, of course, is to set more appointments prior to lunch. And you don't want to do them too far after lunch, because here's what happens is as the day goes down like this and then the person eats lunch. But remember, our lady, our wonderful friend here, she didn't eat a real lunch. She didn't get glucose back into her body. She had a salad, which was emotionally intelligent, socially intelligent, physically intelligent, good for her body overall, really lousy for self-regulation, willpower, okay? So she got down to here, and as she was well behaved, she lost self-regulation units. But had she had, say, an ice cream sundae or something along those lines, her self-regulation units would have popped back up, and from about 1 until 2-ish, 2:30 p.m., she would actually have enough blood sugar in her to be able to have self-regulation again. And then she would sort of get back up to that 35, 45 mark and then slowly start to diminish down again. So you can actually pretty safely set appointments with people in the morning, usually between 8 and 12, and then right after lunch or during lunch until around 2:30. And then you can be pretty certain after that that business is not going to close at a pace anywhere close to what it would have been early in the morning. In order for business to close, with the rare exception of impulse items, say that our friend, say that she went shopping at 7 p.m., okay? Now you're going to notice there's a little bit of difference here. She runs right by the lettuce, right by the cantaloupe, right by the tomatoes, and goes straight for all of the foods that have lots of glucose in them and sugar, sucrose, and all that stuff. And she sticks all that in the grocery cart. And that's what she's going to bring home. She's going to eat those foods. Those are all impulse decisions in the moment. If you and your product are an impulse, you're selling vacations to some beautiful destination and you're going to meet with her and you say, you know, you really deserve this, you're exhausted, she'll say, sign me up. But when it requires thinking, intelligence, rational thought, which is almost all of our sales, opportunities that we have, she's going to say no. And so with the rare exception of the impulse items, she gets into the counter area, you know, where she's going to put all of her stuff up on the conveyor belt. And so she's putting up, she looks over there, there's a Reese's and there's a Kit Kat and there's a Snickers and there's a Hershey's. She grabs them all, sticks them up there, right? All impulse items make all the sales. No problem when a person's self-regulation units are gone, all right? But you probably don't sell an impulse item. You probably sell something that actually takes intelligence and thought to make the decision, and thus our challenge. So what happens? Well, what I used to do is I would have my salespeople make their phone calls on Friday, and I would have them, the appointment phone calls by telephone, and say, hey, Mr. Johnson, we'd like to see you. Could I set up an appointment for 8 o'clock on Monday morning, 9 o'clock Monday morning, then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, always in the morning, filling all the mornings first, and then early in the week, early afternoons. And what happened was, across the spectrum of 3 different businesses, we found that sales went up in those periods, and we found out that where people had low self-regulation, sales were made, just not very often. Not everybody has the exact same cycle. Some people wake up late in the day, they start their shift late, they go to work at 3 p.m., 4 p.m. Those are different situations, right? But on whole, the earlier in the day is going to cost you money if you don't make those sales. Earlier in the week, if you're not there, it's going to cost you money. You need to be not on the telephone on Monday morning. You need to be with your potential customer Monday morning, early Monday afternoon, and you'll probably actually be with people also later in that day as well. But the fact is, you're not going to close as many of them, so you got to set your very most important long-term, high-value appointments. You want them early on Monday, early on Tuesday, early on Wednesday. That's what you want. And then in the course of the day, you want to make sure that if you're taking someone somewhere out to lunch later on, or say it's a late lunch, like it's a 2 o'clock lunch, make sure that you eat, and before you start communicating with your sales presentation, with the other person about the sales presentation, make sure that they've had some glucose, put some sugar into their body, if nothing else, carbohydrates. All of this is totally counter to living a good, healthy life, by the way, right? It's all about building people's willpower and their self-regulation. You need them to have the willpower so they don't brush you aside and say no instantly to you. You need people to have self-regulation when they communicate with you, because you're going to say words and things that just drive that person nuts inside. If they have no more self-regulation units, they're going to break and they're going to fold right there. Okay? And so you got to catch people early in the day and early in the week. Now, what about the month and the year? Okay? Well, it's true that the very last couple of days of the month is typically a pretty good or terrible time to contact somebody. If a company's having a really good month, the chances are quite good the person will set up an appointment to talk to you. But it may not be the best time to close business. The best time to close business is probably the second or the third or the fourth of the month, when they actually have a budget for the month given to them, or for the quarter. So generally speaking, the beginnings of the quarter are a great time to close business, and the great time to actually communicate about the possibility of doing business with somebody is at the end of quarters. And then to close the business and to continue the conversation, January 2nd, and then April 2nd, and then what would it be? July 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then October 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are your really good closing days there as far as time of year. And what about time of the month is concerned? Okay, you know, is there the first week, is it better than the last? Well, again, your first week in the month is quite good typically. The last week in the month is quite poor. If you take your sales records over the last decade, the last 5 years, 15 years, you're going to find that the first 2 weeks in the month you tend to be quite effective. You're also going to find that the third or fourth week in the month you're not anywhere near as good. Why? Because we all sort of have these psychological self-regulation, culturally inculcated self-regulation unit patterns as well. We tend to do much, much better with our self-regulation early in the month than we do late in the month. Today is the 30th of the month. It's the end of the month. And so tempers are a little frayed as I record this today. But if I wait to communicate with somebody until, say, Tuesday or Wednesday next week, when it would be the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, that is when people are going to be a lot more likely to say yes. So there's some really good times to never ask somebody to buy from you. The first would probably be Friday. You probably want to set your appointments on Friday. People are happy to talk to you on the telephone and quickly set up that appointment with you on Friday and make it for Monday. Not at 8 o'clock, but probably 9, once they've had a chance to go through their books, have their morning meeting with the company and all that, and then go ahead and set that 9, the 10, the 11, the 12, the 1, the 2, and then go to the Tuesday cycle. All right? And then there's a lot of times where you'll have the opportunity to close business that really, really matters. And when business really matters, you want to make sure you're closing that early in the month. You don't want to close super important business on the 27th of the month, on the 29th, on the 30th. Don't do that. Those are huge mistakes. So set your appointments on Fridays for the early part of the week. Set your most important appointments for earlier in the day, but not immediately on Monday morning when he does actually have, or she does have, some stress going on, just logistically, from a logistical standpoint. Okay? If you do this, if you follow these tools, and granted, this is just a super fast overview of self-regulation and how it pertains to sales and how you can actually make a lot more money, but you will notice that if you follow this patterning, you will probably find yourself doubling your total revenue for your company, whether it's your company or whether you're a salesperson for another company, you're going to find that people are going to buy a lot more from you than they do anybody else because you now know precisely when to communicate with you. My name is Kevin Hogan. Have a great day. I'll see you here next time.